Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be talking about the Florence Flamingos, a collegiate summer level team that plays in Florence, South Carolina. I'll be speaking with designer Tony Canepa later on in this episode. Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent Ranger Amy Burnett is back. And of course, Dan Simon of Studio Simon will be here with another of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I'm very happy to welcome back to the podcast Brandon Raphael. We talked about the Make and Bacon a few weeks ago. Now we're going to talk about the Florence Flamingos. Brandon is the co-owner of the Florence Flamingos, who have been around just for a couple of seasons, but you have noticed them because they are bright pink and they are hard to miss. Brandon, thanks so much for coming back.
Thanks for having me back, Paul.
This is a really fun brand. This is another collegiate summer level team. It's in addition to the Make and Bacon, they're in the Coastal Plain League. This is another Coastal Plain League team. They were the Red Wolves, and now they're the Florence Flamingos, and their uniform set and their logo is very, very pink. I actually own a Flamingos t-shirt, and it's the bright pink t-shirt with the Flamingo logo on it. It's a lot of fun. I get a lot of comments when I wear it. So the team made a very conscious decision to go, really bold with this brand. What was the thinking that went into this super bold brand for a collegiate summer level team?
Well, like with all of our teams that we have, the fans voted on some name suggestions, and Flamingos came out of that one as the most unique and the most popular. And, when you have an organization that had been around for 20 some odd years as the Red Wolves, obviously it takes time to develop a brand, but we wanted something that was bold and unique, something that was going to stand out, that was really going to push that envelope. And it seemed to, as we're developing it, as we're going through the thought process of what it's going to look like, and Tony's creating some logo ideas, it was incredible to watch that process from the beginning. And it was a no-brainer to go all in on pink. I mean, it's just, when you think about it, I mean, why not?
Well, why not? Indeed. And it's like I said, it's really fun. And the logo is this flamingo that is, it is scowling, right? Like, it's not a friendly, funny cartoon flamingo. It is scowling. It's angry. It's holding a baseball bat. It's up on one leg, as flamingos are wont to do. What were the conversations that went into creating, the decisions that went into, all right, is it an angry flamingo? Is it a cartoony flamingo? What type of brand do we want it to be? After the bright pink conversation, right? Like, I assume what does the flamingo look like came next.
Yeah, I mean, when you're thinking about what color swatches and what color of pink, what shade of pink, and what else is going to complement that. We didn't want it to be like a gender reveal party where it was like pink and blue everywhere, right? That's not what we were thinking, but it had to be something that stood out. And when you're creating those logos and working with, in this case, Tony Canepa to do that, it's like, well, what do we want it to look like? I mean, do we want it to be holding a bat? Do we want it to be holding a ball? And something that's just different. What's that going to look like on a uniform or on shirts or on hats? And having those a couple different logos were something that it was fun to go through that process, because you had the one where the scouring and holding the ball in the mouth, and the other one with holding the bat and stand on one leg. So you had to do something with the one leg, right? And because we knew that once we started with the videos and all that, we had our players doing like their little stance on one leg. It's like, it was really something cool. And then we slowly realized that we're the only sports team in America that the primary color is pink. Like, we started like, well, it wasn't the purpose of it, but we started looking, I'm like, I think we're the only sports team in America that has the primary color pink. I mean, pink bases, pink bats. We've gone all in on the pink. It's not like we did focus groups, but
Sure.
You had some people from the beginning saying, guys aren't going to wear pink. The players are going to hate it. And it's been quite the opposite. I mean, it's awesome.
Well, I was going to ask about that because the logos, I believe that the players love the bright colors and they love, standing out like that. I have no doubt that that's really fun for them. and I'll talk to, you mentioned Tony already. I'm going to talk to him about some of the type and this sort of, very, Southeastern retirement community type that we're looking at here. I don't know if that's a fair way to describe it. I'll talk to
That's
Tony
good.
about that.
Yeah.
But the uniforms, as with the bacon, right? Like it's not just a colored jersey and white or gray pants. It's the full, buying into this color scheme. You've got the black uniform set with the pink socks, which are awesome, by the way. And then you've got the full pink, the pink jersey, pink pants, and black socks. So it is a full commitment to this pink color. And I think that's been the case with other teams where it's not the primary color, but you do see some other teams using pink. The Pensacola Blue Wahoos, I think, are the first one that jumped to mind for me. I'm not surprised that the players like it. But again, was there any hesitation in, okay, we're using this very bright color, and not only are we using it, but we're using it a ton, including on the pants for this team in South Carolina?
I think it's like when you start getting immersed in the thought process of thinking it all the way through, and that's always something let's just think it all the way through, right?
Yeah.
Let's just make sure, because there were other submissions and other thoughts that we had that could have worked. It just kept on going back to the Flamingos, and not indigenous to the region, Florida, South Carolina. But it's like, how do you make that work? And one of the things that we wanted to do, and we're not, as I said earlier about being maybe the first team to have that primary. That's not who we are. We're not all about being the first to do whatever. That's right. It's just what works for us. But it ended up that we ended up branding in the middle of the season. Obviously in 2021 when we first brought on the team, the last 2 games we played as the Flamingos. And it wasn't ideal. Well, it's ideal for the branding perspective. That's perfectly fine. But to get the jerseys that fast, we had to go with a different jersey provider, and they were super heavy. Oh. And at Florence, South Carolina, at the end of July, those guys were sweating, but they loved it. Like they when they first showed it to them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" Because they haven't seen anything like it. Yeah. And so I think that's the thought process of as we went through is just identifying what's going to work, what's not going to work. And I think when you make that commitment and you're all in, and you start talking about what else can we have pink, right? Yeah. Drinks in the ballpark, or the bats are all pink. The bases are, it's just everywhere you look, you want it to be like, this is our part of our brand. It's part of who we are. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. And I think that's the thought process that we have in college summer ball that we can do is just pretty much do whatever we want to a certain extent. And why not have fun? Why not? I mean, you got all these people coming to games that are spending their, disposable income to enjoy some entertainment, have some fun. Why not have a 7-foot tall flamingo hanging out at the ballpark named Flo? I mean, it's like, why not? It's a lot of fun.
So we talked about with the bacon that the origin of that name is obviously just the rhyme. In this instance, you've got the alliteration of Florence and Flamingos. You just said, you obviously flamingos are not exactly, commonplace in Florence, South Carolina. Is there a connection beyond the alliteration? Is that, I mentioned retirement communities already. Are there maybe a lot of folks who have like flamingos in their yards, like you might expect to find in Florida? Or is it just the alliteration and an opportunity to have fun? Why not have fun, as you say?
Well, yeah, it was interesting because one of the first times we were in Florence, I was with Steve, and we were driving through, checking out the area, and we had already made a decision for the flamingo name, but it was almost like one of those things where sometimes you put it out there in the universe, it just kind of happens. So we're driving by one of the hospitals that's actually one of our partners now, MUSC, and it must have been around Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, but they had a bunch of pink flamingos like in the front of the hospital as you drive by on one of the, and like it was just meant to be, right? It was just like, and so we talked to them about that and just all right, and then when we started selling tickets, people that bought ticket plans, we started sending them lawn flamingos that they could put in their lawn. It's just. And there's so much more that we can do that we're just not doing yet. We'd love to, and it picked off, very quickly. Similar to when we launched the Make and Bacon back in 2017, the same thing happened with the Florence Flamingos. That merchandise sales, it was 12 days, I think, that we covered the country pink. Someone from every state purchased something, and then I think we did 6 additional countries, and so it was really something special to see how that was picking up, and still getting these merch orders, and for them different. Like obviously we talked on a previous episode about that, 42% of merch buyers for the bacon are in the state of Georgia. It is like 80-20 it's 80%, only about 20% of the orders for the Florence Flamingos are in the state of South Carolina. So it's crazy how that's really picked up.
That is interesting. And I don't know if I was the first from Colorado, but I definitely did represent.
Yeah, you did. We appreciate that.
I know you say that the nickname came from a fan vote, and so obviously, there's a certain amount of buy-in already. But when the brand came out and it was, as bold as it was there a strong negative reaction, or was it positive right away?
It was mostly positive. I think you have the people from Florence that had been there through the thick and thin of the Red Wolves. It was a little bit of adjustment period for them. It was the same thing in Macon and other areas everyone with Mandalay baseball properties with, in Las Vegas or whatever that was. And that's actually a pretty good example. Las Vegas, my first year there in 2000 was the year they switched over from Las Vegas Stars to the Las Vegas 51s.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And everyone's like, what is this 51 stuff? John Spolstra is crazy. Like, what is going on? And it'd been the Las Vegas Stars like forever.
Yeah.
And it was just an adjustment period. But, I think after a while, once you come to the games and see the entertainment and the different management of the all-you-can-eat plans and everything that's going on in the ballpark, our president there, Mitchell, talks about he wants it to be that every time you come to a Florence Flamingos game, it feels like a vacation. And there's a close proximity in Florence to Myrtle Beach. So Myrtle Beach is about an hour east of Florence, just from a geographical sense, to give that bearings. So it kind of already has a lot of people there. They vacation there in the summer. So it's really something special. And the only thing we're missing is sand. It'd be pretty cool to have a bunch of sand throughout the ballpark.
Well, there you go. You got a project. There's a big renovation for 2023. It's funny, actually, that you say that about the vacation, because I actually have a photo of myself wearing my bright pink Florence Flamingos shirt at the Jersey Shore. And at the same time, I was wearing my Gwinnett Stripers, my lime green Gwinnett Stripers cap. And it wasn't intentional. I had just sort of thrown them both on to run out to the beach. And I realized I was probably causing seizures out there with if I was getting too close to people's field of vision. So Brandon, this is so much fun. These brands are so much fun. I'm so glad to learn about all of these other teams that you've been involved with too, because now I know I can call you up and have you back on the podcast to talk about any number of teams that you've been involved with. Where can people find the Flamingos online?
Well, if you type in Florence Flamingos, you'll find the pink everywhere. So obviously our website, florenceflamingos.com, and we appreciate the support that everyone's been given the Flamingos. And you catch yourself in Florence, South Carolina, or driving on I-95 from New York or from Florida, great spot to stop and grab yourself some Buc-ee's and catch a game.
Some Buc-ee's. Sounds good. Well, if I'm starting out in Philadelphia, I'll make sure that I grab some Wawa first and then hit Buc-ee's on the way. So
that's right. There you go. Right on, of course.
Brandon, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks. Appreciate it having me.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so pleased to have returning to the podcast, Tony Canepa of Tony Canepa Creative. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me back.
We have you on. You were on previously to talk about the Macon Bacon, a totally fun brand that you came up with for a collegiate summer level team. We're back here talking about another Coastal Plain League team, the Florence Flamingos. The Macon Bacon had the rhyme going for them. I guess the Florence Flamingos have the alliteration going for them. Again, with the meaning behind these nicknames, there's really just that sort of loose, sort of literary device that makes this name appropriate. But I'll just ask you. You were approached about creating a brand for a team in Florence, South Carolina. You were told it's going to be a flamingo, kind of a flamingo with some attitude, I would think. What was what were the design considerations that go into creating a hot pink flamingo-based baseball brand?
Well, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is like we knew right off the bat where it was like, it had to be pink. And we had to use that. And definitely when we sat down and discussed that element, it was my point of view that we shouldn't run from the pink. I didn't really want to use it as an accent. I didn't want to use it as something small or try and hide it. I felt like that really was going to be a big strength if we could do it properly.
Yeah.
And with, if you're using the right pink, that can be, tremendously bold. And I feel like there may have been teams that have done it in the past, but I haven't seen anybody do it quite to this level or utilize pink. Definitely not in this way. And if your team's going to be the Flamingos, it has to be pink.
Let's talk about this pink. You say it was a very specific pink, and it is a really specific pink. Like, I think when you hear pink, you think of kind of a pastel color, a softer color. This pink, what am I seeing about this particular pink that makes it striking? Because it is not like it's not an Easter pink, right? Like it is a in your face pink.
Absolutely. And that was one of my thoughts right off the bat, that and something that I went back to a lot in conversations where you said Easter pink, I said cupcake pink. That's what was something to avoid. It was
right.
Like, it can't be cupcake pink. It has to be hot pink. And the closest that we could get to hot pink in any of our materials, in any of the uniforms, like anything we were using, it had to be super bright, hot pink. And if you're a Pantone enthusiast, or if you use those in your work, it's Pantone Rhodamine Red C. That's the Pantone color.
I thought we were going to get into one of the 3-digit codes here. So
that one does not have a code. And hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Rhodamine. It's more of a magenta than a soft pink or anything like that. And after going through my books over and over and trying to dial in the right thing, that was the one that we came up with that we felt like reproduced the best and would be the most consistent throughout all applications.
Sure. And so again, to get even further into the nerdiness here, the color theory nerdiness, you didn't pair the pink with a complement. You didn't pair it with or another color that is close to it on the color wheel, right? Like it's the only hue in there is pink, right? And then you've got
Correct.
blacks and grays and neutrals. I mean, it's the bright pink and no other accent color except for the neutrals, the blacks and the whites and the grays.
Right. And it's black, white, silver, and pink, and that's it. And that was probably the hardest part of putting together this brand, putting together like the logos and the uniforms, is finding the right accent color, or actually kind of like choosing to remove an accent color. And definitely when we were in discussions over logos, there were a lot of like strong opinions early on. I really wanted to try and use like an aqua with it. And that ended up feeling a little bit Miami. It felt a little bit more tropical. And so for the Florence area, it didn't quite feel like the right fit. And so we kind of went away from that. And then I know a couple of people in the organization really wanted a light blue, very much like a Cardinals light blue jersey. And my feeling on that is you can't do blue and pink together. It's going to end up gender reveal party. It's not going to be a sports brand. And there were just that may have been, everything went so smoothly through this whole process, but that may have been the one sticking point where, some people really wanted the light blue and I just absolutely refused. And, but what ended up locking down the black and silver with the pink for me is I came across a photograph of Bret the Hitman Hart from back in the day, pro wrestling. And if you want to look cool and tough and badass in pink, that's where you go to. And it just that locked it in for me, where I was like, it's so striking, it's so dynamic, and this is going to make the pink just the full focus of everything that we see on the field.
This is such a great reference. And of course, you saw me. I immediately went and Googled it because that's, I needed to see it. And so I
Right.
encourage everyone who's listening to this while not driving, go ahead and Google Brett the Hitman Hart, because this is, it's an amazing comparison for this color pink here. Absolutely, the blue would have changed it. Having the Cardinals powder blue, right? Like, or as I would call it, the Phillies powder blue.
Okay. Yeah.
is absolutely something that would have made this a very different brand. And so, as it stands now, it's this almost like monochromatic effect of just the pink, and then from black to white. You talked about how you sort of stood your ground on that, and you decided, you said you refused to implement another hue as a color. Do you find yourself as a designer having to educate clients for their own benefit, right? Like I mean, clearly they're saying, hey, we want to add an accent color, and you as the designer have to say, no, trust me, this is, you don't want that, and this is going to be great without that powder blue.
Well, I'm definitely of the opinion that good ideas come from everywhere. I'm not the type of like artist or creative or designer where it's like everything has to be my idea. I don't want that, actually, because I really like when people come in that something with something that seems like it's from left field, or something that may be completely wrong for what it is, but that always or often will push you into a space of thinking that you hadn't considered before. And whether it was that initial idea that ends up coming to fruition, or something that was derivative from that, or just this new path that was created, that's where the really interesting stuff happens, I think. So it's strong for me to say like I refuse to implement it, and we definitely like I created mock-ups of like all these different versions. I mean, I have tons of color variations where so everybody could kind of see them together. But when it really came down to it, it was one of those things where I felt really, really strongly about that, and I could just kind of see when we got into merchandise and just apparel and just how it would look in the park, in the crowd. I just felt like this was going to be, so much stronger than anything else that we had come up with until then. And it is one of those things when, if I have a client, they're paying me the money, like it's definitely it's their end result that they're going to be living with. And, I want them to be extremely happy with it, but I also want them to trust me in a certain way, and trust that I have some extra expertise and some history and experience, 20 years of experience doing this, where it's like, I think this is a good idea. I think this is a better idea. Let's really give this some consideration and some thought.
Absolutely. Baseball by Design's wildlife consultant, Ranger Amy Burnett, is going to be coming on later on in this episode to talk about the relative merits of flamingos as baseball players. But I wanted to ask you, in creating this character, flamingos, they're kind of spindly. They look like they would snap in half with a strong breeze. You probably wouldn't want to ruffle their feathers, as it were, but it's one of those things where this is not the sturdiest, fiercest of animals necessarily. And so I'm wondering, and you even positioned the flamingo with the one leg up and crossed across its other leg, right? So it's standing on one leg, one fairly spindly leg. It's got a baseball in its mouth, a bat on its shoulder, and a kind of fierce, or at least serious, look on its face. What went into creating this flamingo character that's not cartoony? It's not, I mean, it's a fun logo, but the it's not a goofy cartoon, right? Like, it's a more serious illustration of a flamingo. What went into creating this character?
Just like if your fans have listened to the Making Bacon episode, is something that I always try and look at is contrast. And if we have a not on the surface kind of fierce animal or creature that or object that it, like bacon, that's going to be the logo. You know, maybe there's a way that we can make that a little bit more robust in just how it's presented. And the flamingo head ended up being kind of a key thing, especially when I was looking at not only at live flamingos, but flamingo skulls. I found very interesting that the bone structure, there's not too much structure in the back of the head, in the back of the skull, but the beak is actually really large and really robust. And that was kind of one of those things that that I gravitated towards. And kind of on the color tip, it's like flamingos will have, you know, a black or dark patch on the front of their beak. And that was the other place where I was like, oh, the black's already here. It's already with the pink. Like, you know, these mesh up really, really nicely. And kind of putting that together by creating kind of this like somewhat fierce, as fierce as a flamingo can be, like fierce looking head. That was a nice little like fulcrum for everything to hinge on. And when I did the full body version of that logo, I tried the legs in a variety of compositions, but the flamingo on one leg is so flamingo-y. So it was, you can't help but do that thing. And it created this nice little crossbar and kind of dynamic piece of action, even with the bird just standing there. So I didn't have to have him swinging a bat or kind of in action. Like that flamingo pose just, you know, said all that it needed to say.
Absolutely. So the character, I mean, obviously the color is very striking. I think that's probably the first thing people notice. The character itself is the centerpiece of the brand. But I also want to talk about the type, right? Because the type is very distinctive and it's got this sort of Bauhaus feeling about it. It does have, you know, sort of a very, very sort of Southeast diner, maybe. Like I'm trying to sort of put my finger on like how I would identify this, but it feels sort of Bauhausy to me. So you said flamingo-y, so I get to say Bauhausy. What
Okay,
was
fair enough.
creating this type for this team? What were they trying to evoke with this? What is it that very distinctive type that is, you know, it's not a baseball script, right? Like it's distinctive. It's from outside the baseball world, I think. What was it that you were trying to do with this type?
I think both with the color combination, just the fact that you're using pink in general, makes this a very modern, contemporary type of brand. So to me, you know, doing something that felt very classic and scripty just didn't necessarily fit with the overall just vibe of the piece as a whole, and with the uniforms as a whole. I felt like we wanted to have echoes of historicals or of traditional stuff, but for the most part we wanted to have modern shapes and modern forms. And this type of lettering with it's a non-script, it's very curve heavy. There's not sharp points and angles, and to me that felt like it fit really nicely, especially with the curves of the flamingo head, and it just felt like it fit with the overall aesthetics of the rest of the elements. So I wanted to be modern. I wanted to be a little bit bold, but the typeface itself, like you mentioned, kind of Bauhausy, like, you know, somewhat maybe, you know, classic dinery kind of thing. It is something that is more kind of 70s modern than something else that would be more like a traditional script.
Right. Well, we talked last time when we were talking about the bacon, about the influence that your art career has on your logo design, and that you do a lot of work that is not of the baseball world. And, you know, we also talked about the fact that you played Jar Jar Binks, but not Jar Jar Binks, Cosmo, the 51's mascot, for 7 years as well. So that was, you know, so we know that you've got your baseball bona fides there, especially your minor league baseball bona fides, but your art career has extended well beyond the baseball world. Were it not for the baseball in the flamingo's mouth and the bat on the on his shoulder, this could very easily be a logo for something that was not a baseball team. And I imagine that that's intentional, right? Like that it doesn't have to feel baseball-y to be a baseball logo. Now we've said flamingo-y, Bauhaus-y, and baseball-y all in this interview.
It's a trifecta. It's a hat trick right there.
Is that intentional when you're creating a baseball logo, that it doesn't necessarily, if you were to remove the literal representations of baseball, that it could be used in other applications?
Even though I worked in baseball and professional, sports for almost 20 years, I wasn't that guy who would go to baseball games on my day off. I didn't watch baseball games on TV. I enjoyed working in sports. I enjoyed being in it all the time. It's a really amazing place to do design and see it out in the world. But I wasn't like some people in the organization where it's like, hey, we're working 72 home games, but if I have a day off, we're going to go up to a Mariners game or something like that. That just really wasn't my thing. But what I am into is like, I'm into comic books, I'm into movies, I'm into all these other types of media. And kind of the cool thing about that is I get to pull things from a lot of different places that are outside the sports world and then bring them in to the baseball landscape. And I think that's when interesting things happen, is like you can have the utmost respect and the utmost knowledge, or you can have knowledge of all of this baseball history, but then you get to pick when to hang on to that or when to discard it when it's not necessary, because you don't have necessarily that personal. There are certain things that I love personally in the baseball world, in the sports world, but it's nice when you can kind of set those aside and then bring in something that may be completely new and different. But you always need to make sure that it fits the goal and the purpose of what you're doing. Just because it's different doesn't make it right. So I find that with sometimes with new baseball team or new baseball logos and stuff like that. Like when I was, in minor league baseball, I would inevitably see a million press releases that would start out with, "We're the first team to do blank," and it's
Right.
like, use this thread color, use a whatever object in their logo and everything. And sometimes I would be like, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's a neat choice that I wouldn't have considered maybe, or it's a neat idea to bring to the table." But other times is like, just because you're the first team to do it doesn't really make it good or better or worse. It needs to work and be awesome and serve the purpose in and of itself. So when I bring something new and different, maybe like a typeface like this and whatnot, I want it to really work well as a uniform and a logo first in the baseball environment. And then if people go like, "Oh, this is kind of neat because it's unusual," I love that too.
You were very gracious in not correcting my mischaracterization of your minor league baseball professional career. I don't think you were Cosmo for 7 years. You did work for the Rainiers, the Tacoma Rainiers, for 7 years in their design department. So that was
I was Cosmo for 3 seasons.
Okay, all right, and then you went and worked for the Rainiers. So obviously, I mean, we're sitting here talking about the logo and the sort of overall brand. This obviously extends to the uniform set as well. And just like you did with the Macon Bacon, you created some full uniform sets that were in the colors from the brand. So there's an all black one with pink socks. There is very notably an all pink one with black socks. And, and obviously that pink is used in other applications, that, the hats, the socks, whatever. So when you were expanding this brand and expanding these colors, what was your thinking in taking that from the micro world of the logo to the macro world of the larger brand and the uniforms?
That's a great question. I think for me is when I'm working with uniforms is that I want them to look great both up close, but I also want them to look great from the stands, and I want them to look dynamic on the field. And one of the things when we decided on such a vivid pink for our primary color, and knowing that we're going to have black and gray as the secondary colors, that pink really wants to be front and center. And so I was super excited about, I was just thinking as I was working, I was like, "Oh, we're going to get to do a neon pink like solid neon pink hat, and that's just going to look incredible. And doing the head to toe, or not quite head to toe, but the pink body uniform with the black sleeves and socks, or the black uniform topped with the pink hat and bottom with the pink socks. I just felt like those were going to be so vibrant and dynamic against, the lovely green backdrop of a baseball diamond, and being able to see those from the stands and having no question from 200 yards away about what team is playing. I think that's a really cool thing.
There's your complementary color pairing, by the way, is the like the green of the grass and then the pink of the uniform. So absolutely.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Tony, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with about all these design details. This is such a fun conversation for me. I really love getting into this little level of detail. Absolutely, I'm going to have you back on when we talk about the Las Vegas 51s. That episode is coming, I promise. Want to hear about your experience as Cosmo the mascot for sure. In the meantime, where can people find you on social media, online?
I am most active on Instagram. My handle is the Tony Canepa, and you can find me at tonycanepa.com. That's TonyCanepa. It's always fantastic to be here. I'm excited that we're making this a regular thing. And yeah, thank you so much for having me back.
Oh man, it's a blast to talk to you. And yeah, absolutely. We'll find ways to get you back on because it's always a fun conversation. And all of those socials and the website will be in the show notes. And Tony, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm recording live in Costa Rica with Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent Ranger Amy Burnett. Costa Rica is interesting for this episode about the Florence Flamingos because there are roughly as many flamingos in Costa Rica as there are in Florence, South Carolina. Am I right?
You're right. There aren't any flamingos here, but they do live in Central America. And we're in Central America right now, which is pretty awesome.
We're in Monteverde in Costa Rica, land of many, many, many birds. You are what they call a birder. Tell me what a birder is.
A birder is someone who really nerds out when they see things hopping around or flying around, even if they're brown, which we were just talking about this morning. But I love all birds. They just make me happy.
So we just saw something. I got really excited earlier this week because it was like we were talking about, I overheard conversations about a saberwing and a euphonium and a quetzal. And yeah, and I was just like, oh, there's a new Star Wars episode coming out.
And we're talking about birds.
We were talking about birds. And I was just like, oh, we're talking about birds.
Saberwing is a hummingbird, by the way.
So,
in case you're wondering.
So I was very excited when we came here.
I'm still laughing.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad you cracked yourself up with that. I was very excited when we came here because this is the land of all sorts of like exciting and colorful birds. Even as a non-bird nerd myself, I was excited to come here and see a lot of awesome birds because there are some amazing birds here. The toucan.
Yeah, they're so colorful. All these birds.
So
different colors.
The national bird of Costa Rica is what?
It is the clay-colored thrush.
The clay-colored thrush.
Wait, everyone's over. Oh, look over there. There it is.
This has been the entire last 5 days, by the way. Is Amy?
Did you see that brown bird over there?
I did not. But so let's talk about this. The national bird of Costa Rica.
Oh, sorry.
We just missed it. The national bird. It sounds a little bit like a social disease.
Yeah.
And
doesn't sound very good.
And also, it's like this little. I was like, oh, a sparrow, and you're like, no, that's the national bird of Costa Rica. So they have toucans and they have all these other
quetzals, and they're green, and they have all these hummingbirds and
parrots and parakeets.
Yeah. And then you get to see the national bird of Costa Rica, and it's brown.
It's brown. Okay.
Yeah.
So why is that the national bird of Costa Rica?
No one knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody knows.
It's everywhere. Maybe it's because you can see it all over Costa Rica, even in parking lots.
What are these two here?
Oh my gosh. That's a flycatcher.
Okay, a little blue guy.
Oh, you saw a blue guy? That's a euphonium.
I saw a euphonium.
Yeah, you were just mentioning that.
Episode 10 of Star Wars coming up.
That's pretty awesome. I need my binoculars.
All right. So
Let's do this so I can get back to bird watching.
okay, sorry. So we're here to talk about the Florence Flamingos. There are, surprisingly, when I looked this up, I was like, oh, we'll go to Costa Rica where there are definitely flamingos. Not really flamingos here. They do exist in Central America, but not here in Costa Rica.
Right. And flamingos exist in the U.S., just not in South Carolina.
Also not in South Carolina. So where do flamingos exist normally?
They can be seen in South Florida along the Gulf Coast, but not typically. So that's sort of, they're usually what we call vagrants. So if you have, I guess that some of the baseball players that could be also known as vagrants. They kind of move in and out of teams, right?
Mm-hmm. They're called journeymen.
Journeyman. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that could be like vagrant, journeyman. They're kind of the same thing.
So flamingos are journeymen.
They're journeymen.
Okay.
I like it.
All right.
But we were talking about how colorful these Costa Rican birds are. And flamingos are really, really colorful as well. And I was like, did they make the players wear these pink uniforms? And you're like, yeah, you show me a picture, and that's insane. It's incredible. I wonder how the players like wearing pink.
They don't make them wear them. The players like wearing them.
Do they like me?
Yeah, it's
like
super
them?
cool. Yeah, the bright
They're
colors.
confident with their masculinity.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Sure.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the flamingos, do you know how they get their colors?
I do know this actually. I know this. It's from eating shrimp, maybe.
Yeah, eating shrimp, crustaceans, little things, and so what they eat. They are what they eat literally.
Mm.
And so most flamingos in captivity are not as brightly colored as the ones in the wild. Did you know that? Because it's hard for the zoos to replicate like a really natural, diverse diet. So, maybe the baseball players are what they eat on that team. They'd have to eat like a whole bunch of like Hubba Bubba bubblegum.
That would be
pink.
that, and so flamingos are kind of Hubba Bubba pink. So maybe if the Florence Flamingos were just like chewing Hubba Bubba bubblegum.
I think they're onto something. I think we could get them some more money. Wait, how come we can't make your podcast make money?
That we're working on it.
Hubba Bubba, if you're listening, Paul will sponsor you.
Yeah,
Wait,
no,
other way around.
you'll sponsor me. That's not how it works.
Let me re-say that. Hubba Bubba, if you're listening, you need Paul as your sponsor.
No, you did it again.
Oh, I did? Oh.
You need to sponsor Paul. That's
Hubba
okay.
Bubba, if you're listening, you need to sponsor Paul.
All three of those are staying in, by the way.
No, don't you dare.
People are going to think we're pumping these sounds in like they do for the Masters tournament.
I don't think so. Because if we were, we would be saying like crazy, like we do the Aura pendulum.
Or a flamingo. Maybe we could edit some flamingo sounds in. Flamingo. I don't know what a flamingo sound is.
I don't either. I think
Okay.
they make hissing noises. Anyway, edit that up.
Let's talk about if I edited out everything you asked me to edit out, this interview would be like 4 minutes long.
Let's talk about how flamingo stands.
Let's talk about flamingos as baseball players. We'll start with how they stand.
Yeah.
They've got an interesting stance.
They do.
Normally, when you're batting, you're talking about balance, but the flamingo doesn't look super balanced.
They actually are more balanced with 2 feet. It's true. With 2 legs, rather. Normally, flamingos stand on 2 feet, and that's better for balance. However, every once in a while, their legs get tired, so they put one leg up. And
For the listener at home, Amy is standing on the front lawn of our hotel in Monteverde, Costa Rica, on 1 foot, with both hands waving in the air, kind of wildly.
And now I'm grabbing on you for balance.
People are coming out on their decks to see what the heck is going on.
So when they get tired, they do that. So if you get tired, people listening at home, just put your leg up and maybe put it up on an ottoman or something. So these flamingos are when they get tired, they can sleep on 1 leg, and that helps to rest. Because when they really can't sit down, so that helps them. So I was thinking about pitchers who have really weird flamingo stances. Have you ever seen any pitchers with flamingo stances?
I bet you're about to talk about them.
I am. I looked up one person had a really weird flamingo stance. His name was Nestor Cortez Jr., and he basically was trying to get Shohei Ohtani out. And so he was standing on 1 leg, and then he would like wave it around and he'd put it back down. So he was kind of like he was doing the fake out flamingo stance. And people started laughing, and I think it cracked him up and he got a strike. But I'm not really sure. But if you look it up on YouTube, there's lots of videos of Nestor Cortez Jr. faking people out on 1 leg, just being a funny pitcher.
That's pretty amazing.
He'd kind of like put his leg up and then he'd like swing it back and forth. I wish you could see this. This is a visual.
Yeah, now it just looks like we're dancing.
But a reason that a baseball player, I found out when I did some research, does the 1-legged thing is it hides the ball. And then so they can't see if they're going to throw a slider or a fastball or, I don't know. You know the pitches. What other?
An
pitches
ephus.
What's that? Is that like a euphonium?
It's from the new Star Wars.
We are so on two different planes when it comes to, you like Star Wars, I like birds.
Well, and we both like baseball.
We both like baseball, so we can come together on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So your assertion is, in the pantheon of minor league baseball logos, nicknames, mascots, that the Flamingos roll on the team.
There's a turkey vulture.
Oh my God.
Look. It's pretty close. Look alive.
It must think we're about to expire out here.
Yeah, don't worry, it'll only eat you or come down closer if he thinks you're dead. So just look alive. You're on.
What I was going to say was that your assertion is that Flamingos would be the pitcher on the minor league baseball mascot nickname logo team.
Yes, they would definitely be the pitcher because they're raising their leg up as they're getting ready for the windup.
I really wish we had video of this.
At least I made the sounds.
For the record, it's 8:00 in the morning and Amy has not started drinking yet. That's at least 40 minutes away.
You did make me coffee though. You made me some espresso. So
that was some pretty intense coffee.
I'm glad that I didn't I asked for a second one, but there were only like the 2 pods in the hotel room, so I couldn't have another, but it's probably a good thing. So one other thing about a pitcher lifting his leg is there's actually a good reason behind it. It's for momentum. Did you know that?
I guess I didn't exactly know that, no.
All right, there's some science behind this. You ready? For every 2 inches that a pitcher lifts his leg...
I'm just going to hold on here so you don't fall over.
Every 2 inch, the pitcher lifts his leg beyond the waist level. He adds 1% to his total forward movement energy. And that 1% can translate into additional mile per hour of velocity.
Wow.
So
you've really done your research here.
So that would make a big difference. I mean, have you ever tried to hit a fastball?
Not in a long time. Not since I was in the Little League.
And we need to go to one of those batting cages. I think that'd be fun.
Right. Yeah, because, in the majors, you're like, that guy only throws 92 miles an hour. That's slow. And then anything over, 55 in real life.
I could never hit that.
There's no way.
Can we go to one of those batting cages and maybe there'll be ice cream there?
Not here in Costa Rica. We've got some other stuff to do here on our last day in Costa Rica. By the time this drops, we'll be back in boring old Colorado with all of our brown birds there. What's this guy over here?
That is a rufous-colored sparrow. I have to say that really carefully because it's hard to say. Rufous-colored sparrow. So that's one that we don't have in Colorado. It's pretty cool.
It's not that cool. It looks like every other brown bird, I think.
Oh, that one right there. There's the bigger one hopping. I saw a little one hopping. There's a bigger one hopping right there. That's the national bird of Costa Rica.
Okay.
That's your clay-colored thrush.
I think the national bird of Costa Rica should be the sloth or the howler monkey.
That's not a bird.
Now you're just splitting hairs.
Feathers.
Ranger Amy, that was good. Ranger Amy Burnett, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Let me see your flamingo.
What kind of thing is that to say?
I'm thinking of I'm doing like a Karate Kid stance here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ranger Amy Burnett, baseball by design wildlife correspondent. Thanks for joining me in this tropical paradise.
It's so beautiful right now.
Talk about flamingos and the Florence Flamingos. We got Dan Simon coming up next with a Studio Simon Stumper.
All right, I'll fly off.
Oh boy, I'm gonna go talk to Dan now. It's time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers. Dan Simon, thank you so much for once again hopping on, bringing a trivia question, bringing so much fun to the Baseball by Design podcast. I'm so excited to see where we go today on this episode about the Florence Flamingos.
Yes, even though it's been a week since we've last seen each other.
Definitely been a week.
I kind of feel like I've never left. Like I'm just always there.
It's like we've been sitting here in the basement all morning instead of recording these once a week.
Yes. So let's dive into it. Even though flamingos don't dive, they wade. But let's wade into it then.
Let's wade. Okay.
Okay. So in this episode, you have talked about at length about the Florence Flamingos. But before they were the Flamingos, they were the Florence Red Wolves.
Right. We did. We chatted a little bit about that during this episode.
Well,
but I don't know too much about the Red Wolves.
Well, let's see what you might know about it, because our Studio Simon Stumper Today asks, which of these friends of the show, your show that is,
Our show.
designed the last iteration of the Red Wolves identity?
Oh.
Was it A, Sky Design Studios, B, Brandiose, or C, Studio Simon?
Oh man, this is a high stakes trivia question right here. If I get this one wrong, I sort of pride myself on being able to recognize brands, the designers of certain brands, and when I get them wrong, I'm always a little bit surprised, right? Because there are a lot of brands that exist out there that are sort of outside the sort of traditional vernacular of certain designers, and you're surprised to learn that it was a certain designer who had done that particular logo.
Well, let me interject here.
Yeah.
As I read off those choices,
Yeah.
those possible answers, you shook your head back and forth, meaning no, about one of them. So it seems to me, and I'm not saying you're right or you're wrong, but it seems to me you have eliminated one already. So when you talk about the particular visual vernacular for a particular identity, can you even picture what the Florence Red Wolves identity was? So you feel that this is one that, well, it'll be interesting to me to hear if you feel that this one feels like something that could have been done by one or the other, or if you really feel there's immediately somebody's hand in this that you feel, I'm certain, did it.
So I'm fairly familiar with Sky Dillon's work, and I feel like I have a sense when I picture a Sky Dillon logo. I picture, I have a specific sense for what that looks like. I think the Ferry Hawks logo is a pretty good representation of Sky Dillon's visual vernacular. Sky, by the way, sent me, after he and I talked for this podcast, he sent me this beautiful shirt with his awesome Banana Slugs logo on it, which was like so kind of him to do. I really appreciated that. It was, similar to when I got a box full of hats from you that time.
Yeah, you're the one that's supposed to be sending us gifts, as opposed which you have.
I've sent you some helmets. Oh, you got it right there. The Baseball by Design little batting helmet. Absolutely. So, and I'm going to buy you a lot of beers at some point later this summer, which we'll discuss at another time. So, okay. So I shook my head at Brandiose because I don't think that the Red Wolves were Brandiose. I just, that doesn't ring true to me. Doesn't seem like it fits with their oeuvre, as it were.
Is that because of how it is visually, or do you not think that, they've done collegiate summer league teams of Fond du Lac Dock Spiders, but are you thinking that's not something they would have done, or it doesn't look like something they would have done?
Stylistically, it doesn't seem like something they would have done. And also there's sort of a two parts to this question for me. One, I feel like I sort of know the catalog of certain designers. I'm also in my head, Dan, eliminating you because I feel like I would know this by now after all our conversations if you had created the Red Wolves logo. And I know that you've had a close working relationship with Sky Dillon over the years. And so when you asked the question, even before you gave me the multiple choices, Sky Dillon was the name that bumped into my head, or Sky Dillon was the name that jumped into my head. And then he was the first choice.
Okay, so is that your answer?
Well, hang on a second. I was waiting for Yodel to stop meowing here. So
has Yodel weighed in?
Yodel, I think, is weighing in. Yodel is hearing me say Sky Dillon. I don't think it was Brandiose. I don't think it was Studio Simon. I think it was Sky Dillon.
Well, Paul, your hitting streak continues. You're nipping at Joe DiMaggio's heels. You know what? When we first started the Studio Simon Stumper segments, I told you I'd keep track of them. I didn't lie, but I did not keep my word because I have not been keeping track. But it seems to me like you have you've been on a roll lately. Now, when you record a podcast and the various segments, they don't always get posted in the order in which
Right.
you record them. So I don't know if maybe there was an incorrect answer here that or there, but I can tell you in the order we've recorded, I can't even remember the last time that you answered incorrectly. So I may need to make these a little bit tougher, although you have had to think. You did have to think about it.
I did. Oh, I had to, and this was a fun one because it got me thinking about different designers and their styles, and my sort of basic knowledge of their catalog. And yeah, we record these in one order, and then sometimes things happen and I jumble the sequence around. And so I've had to do some fancy editing about, well, last week we talked about, and then it turns out that I completely upend the order. One of the things that has changed in the sequence of podcasts that I've done, of episodes that I've done, is I was scheduled to speak with the Las Vegas Aviators the very day that the Oakland A's announced that they were moving to Las Vegas. And so, that episode was all queued up, and you and I had done our stumper. I think in the order in which they're appearing, I do have something of a streak going. If this is your campaign to lift my spirits and boost my self-confidence, well, it's I certainly appreciate that.
We'll try to make people happy. That's my job, and hopefully it's my personality as well. So.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, as always. We will talk to you next week. I know you have some travels coming up. Safe travels. Enjoy that. Yeah, we'll talk to you next week for another Studio Simon Stumper.
Okay, I'll see you when I get back.